The year was 1922. Deep in the Bavarian countryside, a family toiled on their secluded farm. The farm was called Hinterkaifeck. It was a place of relentless labor, but also of eerie tranquility. Andreas Gruber, the family patriarch, was a stern man, but he cherished his family. His wife, Casilia, was a resilient woman who kept the farm running. Their daughter, Victoria, a young widow, lived with them, along with her 2 children, Casilia and Joseph. The youngest, Joseph, was just 2 years old. They had a maid, Maria Baumgartner, who had just started working for the family. They were a simple family, unaware of the creeping darkness that loomed over them. Hinterkaifeck was isolated. The nearest village was more than a mile away. This isolation made the family vulnerable. They were alone, with no one to hear their cries for help. They were exposed, and someone knew it. Strange things started happening at Hinterkaifeck. Footsteps were heard in the attic. But when Andreas went to investigate, he found no one. A set of house keys went missing. Days later, a local newspaper appeared on the farmhouse steps. It was from a newspaper that no one in the family read. Andreas was convinced someone was watching them. He told his neighbors about the strange happenings, but they dismissed his concerns as an overactive imagination. They told him it was just the wind, or perhaps some wild animals. One evening, Andreas found a set of footprints in the snow. The footprints led from the edge of the forest directly to the back door of the farmhouse, but they did not lead back. Whoever had made those tracks was still inside. Andreas searched the house. He found nothing. He told his family that they were not safe. He wanted to leave Hinterkaifeck, but they stayed. It was a fatal mistake. Days later, a man came to the village. He said he had been sent to repair a piece of farm machinery at Hinterkaifeck, but the family was not answering his calls. The neighbors, remembering Andreas's worries, went to the farmhouse. It was eerily quiet. The door to the barn was ajar. Inside, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. The bodies of Andreas, Casilia, Victoria, and young Casilia lay brutally murdered. They had been killed with a mattock, a farm tool used for digging. The killer had taken his time. The murders were personal. The villagers searched for little Joseph and the maid Maria. They found them in the house. Joseph was lying in his cot, dead. Maria was sprawled on the floor beside him. The killer had stayed at the farm for days after the murders. He had fed the cattle, he had eaten the family's food, and he had slept in their beds. Then he vanished. The killer in the farmhouse. The murders at Hinterkaifeck shocked the nation. Who could have committed such a horrific crime? And why? The police investigation was extensive. Over 100 suspects were interviewed, but the killer was never found. Theories abound. Some whispered that it was Victoria's former lover seeking revenge. Others believed it was a robbery gone wrong. The killer had stolen nothing of value, but he had stayed at the farm. He had lived with the bodies of his victims. Why? Was it madness or something more sinister? The killer had meticulously covered his tracks. He left no fingerprints, no witnesses, just a family brutally slain and a mystery that would haunt the world for a century. The murders at Hinterkaifeck remain unsolved. The killer was never brought to justice. The farm itself was demolished years later. But the story lives on, a chilling reminder that even in the most idyllic settings, darkness can lurk.